I was sitting in the third row of the massive graduation auditorium at Stanford University, surrounded by my fellow MBA graduates, when I felt the familiar knot forming in my stomach. My family had arrived 20 minutes late as usual, shuffling loudly into the row behind me just as the commencement ceremony was beginning. I could smell the alcohol on my father's breath even from my seat in front of him. "This is taking forever," Dad muttered to my mother, not bothering to lower his voice despite the formal nature of the ceremony. I could be watching the game right now. I tried to focus on the keynote speaker, a renowned tech entrepreneur who was discussing innovation and leadership, but Dad's commentary continued throughout the presentation. He criticized everything from the speaker's suit to the length of his speech, making it clear to everyone within earshot that he'd rather be anywhere else. When my name was finally called, Madison Hayes, Master of Business Administration summa cum laude, I walked across the stage with pride, knowing I'd earned this moment through 4 years of relentless work while building my tech startup. As I accepted my diploma and shook hands with the dean, I caught sight of my family in the audience. Mom was taking pictures with her phone, but Dad was checking his watch and looking visibly bored. After the ceremony concluded, I made my way back to my family, diploma in hand, feeling a mixture of accomplishment and disappointment. This was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life, but I could already sense Dad's impending critique of the entire experience. "Well, that was a waste of 3 hours, Dad announced as I approached. "All that fancy talk about changing the world. You know what changes the world? Hard work and common sense, not sitting in classrooms talking about theories." "Dad, I just graduated summa cum laude from one of the top business schools in the country," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Yeah, and what's that going to get you?" "A fancy piece of paper and a pile of student debt." He leaned closer to me, his voice dropping to what he thought was a whisper but was actually loud enough for people around us to hear clearly. "Madison, let's be realistic here. You'll never amount to anything. All this education nonsense is just delaying the inevitable." I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. This was exactly the kind of undermining comment I'd been hearing from Dad my entire life. When I'd gotten into Stanford, he'd said I was putting on airs. When I'd started my company during my second year, he'd called it playing with computers. Nothing I achieved was ever good enough, successful enough, or practical enough for his approval. What Dad didn't know was that during my 4 years at Stanford, I hadn't just been earning my MBA. I'd been building CodeCraft Solutions, a software development company that specialized in creating custom enterprise solutions for Fortune 500 companies. What had started as a small project in my dorm room had grown into a multi-million-dollar business with 43 employees and offices in San Francisco, Austin, and Seattle. "Excuse me," a distinguished voice said from behind us. "Are you talking about Ms. Hayes?" We all turned to see Dr. Richard Sterling, the president of Stanford University, approaching our group with a warm smile. He was flanked by 2 other university officials and what appeared to be a reporter from the Stanford Alumni magazine. "Yes," Dad said, suddenly straightening up and putting on his best talking to important people voice. "This is my daughter Madison. We're very proud of her." "As you should be," Dr. Sterling replied. "Ms. Hayes, I was hoping to catch you before you left. I wanted to personally thank you for your extraordinary generosity to our university." I felt my stomach drop. Dr. Sterling was about to reveal something I'd specifically asked to keep confidential until after graduation. "What generosity?" Dad asked, looking confused. "Sir, your daughter has just made the largest single donation by an alumnus in Stanford's history. $50 million for our new engineering building." The color drained from Dad's face completely. Mom's phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. My brother Kevin, who'd been half listening while scrolling through social media, suddenly looked up with his mouth hanging open. $50 million? Dad repeated, his voice barely audible. $50 million, Dr. Sterling confirmed enthusiastically. The Madison Hayes Center for Innovation will be breaking ground this fall. It will house our most advanced computer science and engineering programs, providing state-of-the-art facilities for the next generation of tech leaders. I could see Dad's mind racing trying to process this information. According to his understanding of my life, I was a recent graduate with student loans and no significant income. The idea that I had $50 million to donate to anything was completely incomprehensible to him. But how? Mom started to ask, then stopped herself. Dr. Sterling smiled proudly. Your daughter is the founder and CEO of Codecraft Solutions. I assume you know about her remarkable success in the tech industry. The silence from my family was deafening. Kevin was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mom looked like she was about to faint. Dad appeared to be having some kind of mental breakdown, opening and closing his mouth without any words coming out. Actually, I said quietly, they don't know about my company. Dr. Sterling's expression shifted to surprise, then understanding. Oh, I see. Well, perhaps this is a conversation for later. Ms. Hayes, would you like to schedule a time this week to discuss the building plans and the naming ceremony? That would be perfect, Dr. Sterling. Thank you. After the university president and his team moved on to greet other graduates, my family stood in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Dad found his voice. Madison, what the hell is going on here? Dad, maybe we should go somewhere private to talk about this. No, we're talking about it right here. How do you have $50 million to give away? I took a deep breath, realizing there was no way to ease into this conversation. I own a software company. We develop enterprise solutions for major corporations. Last year we generated $180 million in revenue. That's impossible, Kevin said. You're a student. You live in a tiny apartment and drive a 10-year-old Honda. I live modestly because I prefer to invest my money rather than spend it on unnecessary luxuries. And yes, I've been a student, but I've also been running a company for the past 4 years. What kind of company? Mom asked, her voice shaky. We create custom software solutions for Fortune 500 companies. Inventory management systems, customer relationship platforms, data analytics tools. Big corporations pay us millions of dollars to solve their technical problems. Dad was shaking his head repeatedly. This doesn't make sense. If you had that kind of money, why didn't you tell us? Because of exactly what you said 10 minutes ago, Dad. Because you told me I'd never amount to anything. Because every time I've tried to share good news with this family, you've found a way to minimize it or criticize it. But $50 million is what I decided to donate to Stanford because this university gave me the education and connections that made my success possible. It's an investment in the future of technology and innovation. How much money do you actually have? Kevin asked bluntly. I looked around at the other families celebrating nearby, realizing this was probably not the ideal place for this conversation. Kevin, I'm worth approximately $340 million. Mom sat down heavily on the nearest bench. Dad continued staring at me like I was a stranger. Kevin pulled out his phone and started typing frantically, probably Googling my company. Holy shit, Kevin said, looking at his screen. Codecraft Solutions is listed as one of the fastest-growing tech companies in California. Madison Hayes, CEO and founder. Net worth estimated between $300 to $400 million. Language, Kevin, Mom said automatically, even though she was clearly in shock. Mom, Madison is worth more money than we'll see in 10 lifetimes, and she's been hiding it from us for years. I wasn't hiding it, I said defensively. I was protecting it. There's a difference. Protecting it from what? Dad demanded. From this. From you making it about money instead of family. From you suddenly treating me differently because of my bank account instead of who I am as a person. Madison, this changes everything, Mom said softly. No, it doesn't. I'm the same person I was an hour ago. The only thing that's changed is what you know about my financial situation. Why didn't you trust us with this information? Dad asked, and for the first time since the revelation he sounded hurt rather than angry. I sat down on the bench next to Mom, suddenly feeling exhausted by the emotional weight of this conversation. Dad, 3 months ago when I mentioned that I was thinking about buying a house, you told me I was being unrealistic and that I should focus on finding a husband to support me instead of chasing impossible dreams. I was trying to be practical. 6 months ago when I said I was considering starting a nonprofit foundation, you said I should worry about taking care of myself before trying to save the world. Madison, I didn't know. Exactly. You didn't know because you never asked about my work. You never showed interest in what I was building. Every conversation we've had for the past 4 years has been you telling me what I can't do, what I'll never achieve, what I need to be more realistic about. Dad was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. You were protecting yourself from having to acknowledge that your daughter might be more successful than you expected. That's not fair, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Dad, you've been undermining my confidence and dismissing my ambitions my entire life. Did you really think I was going to share my biggest successes with someone who consistently told me I was aiming too high? Mom reached over and took my hand. Madison, we had no idea you felt that way. Because you never asked how I felt. You just assumed that my goals were unrealistic and my plans were naive. So what happens now? Kevin asked. Are you going to keep pretending to be broke? I'm not pretending to be anything. I live according to my values, not my bank account. I drive a reliable car because I don't need a status symbol. I live in a modest apartment because I'd rather invest in my business and charitable causes than in expensive real estate. But Madison, Mom said, you could have anything you want. I do have everything I want. I have a successful company that I'm passionate about. I have the resources to make a positive impact on the world. I have the freedom to pursue projects that matter to me. What about a family? A husband? Kids? Dad asked. What about them? Well, with your success, you could attract a really good husband now. I stared at him in disbelief. Dad, do you hear yourself? You're suggesting that my value as a potential wife has increased because I have money. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. And it's exactly why I didn't tell you about my success. Because you immediately started thinking about how my money could benefit our family rather than celebrating what I've accomplished. Dr. Sterling approached our group again, this time with a small camera crew from the local news station. Ms. Hayes, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Channel 7 would like to do a brief interview about your donation and your company's success. Would you be available for a few minutes? I looked at my family, all of whom were staring at me with expressions ranging from pride to confusion to something that might have been awe. Of course, Dr. Sterling. The next 20 minutes were surreal. I found myself being interviewed on live television about my company's growth, my plans for the future, and my commitment to supporting education and innovation. The reporter asked thoughtful questions about the challenges of building a tech company while completing graduate school, and I found myself enjoying the opportunity to talk about the work I was truly passionate about. Throughout the interview, I could see my family standing in the background, watching and listening as I discussed projects and achievements they'd never heard of. I talked about our latest contract with Apple to develop a new inventory management system. I mentioned our partnership with Microsoft on a machine learning project. I explained our company's commitment to hiring diverse talent and supporting underrepresented groups in technology. When the interview concluded, I rejoined my family, who were all looking at me with expressions I'd never seen before. Madison, Dad said slowly, I owe you an apology. For what specifically? For everything. For not believing in you. For not supporting your dreams. For telling you that you'd never amount to anything when you've clearly accomplished more than I ever imagined possible. Dad, I didn't build this company to prove you wrong. I know. That's what makes it even more impressive. You did this for yourself despite my discouragement. I did it because I love technology and I love solving problems. The financial success was a bonus, not the goal. Mom was crying quietly. Madison, I'm so proud of you. And I'm so sorry we made you feel like you couldn't share this with us. I wanted to share it with you. I wanted you to be excited about my work and proud of what I was building. But every time I tried to talk about my goals, I got shut down. We'll do better, Kevin said. I want to hear about everything. Your company, your projects, your plans for the future. I'd like that. Dad stood up and, for the first time in years, gave me a genuine hug. Madison, I was wrong about everything. You've accomplished something extraordinary, and I'm sorry I wasn't supportive when you needed me to be. Dad, I forgive you. But I need you to understand that this is who I've always been. Ambitious, driven, capable. The money is new, but my character isn't. I see that now. And I promise to do better. Good. Because I'd like you to be involved in my life. The real version of my life, not the version you thought you knew. Over the following months, my relationship with my family changed dramatically. Dad started asking detailed questions about my work and even began offering suggestions based on his decades of experience in manufacturing. Mom became one of my biggest cheerleaders, sharing news of my company's achievements with her friends and colleagues. Kevin decided to switch his major to computer science and asked if he could intern at Codecraft Solutions during the summer. The Madison Hayes Center for Innovation at Stanford opened 18 months later, and my entire family attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Dad gave a speech about how proud he was of his daughter's achievements and how sorry he was for not recognizing her potential sooner. I spent years telling Madison she needed to be more realistic about her goals, he told the assembled crowd. It turns out I was the one who needed to be more realistic about her capabilities. After the ceremony, as we toured the state-of-the-art facilities that would train the next generation of engineers and computer scientists, Dad pulled me aside. Madison, I have a question. What's that? That day at graduation when Dr. Sterling first mentioned your donation, did you know this was going to happen? You mean did I know you were going to find out about my company? Yeah. I smiled. Dad, I donated that money specifically because I knew the university would announce it during graduation. I wanted you to find out in a way that would make it impossible for you to dismiss or minimize. You planned the whole thing? I planned for you to finally understand who I really am and what I'm capable of achieving. That's brilliant. And a little bit sneaky. I learned from the best. You always said I was too clever for my own good. I was wrong about that too. You're exactly as clever as you need to be. As we walked through the building that bore my name, surrounded by students working on projects that would shape the future of technology, I realized that the best gift I'd given myself wasn't the financial success or even the recognition. It was the courage to stop hiding my achievements and start demanding the respect I'd earned. The Hayes family had finally learned that sometimes the person you underestimate most is the one who will surprise you the most.